So obviously we just recently launched Sponsored Products Video, and that's really about that immediate conversion. That's really about educating your customer at that moment of purchase, that intent moment. But then there's things like Sponsored Brands Video or Video Beyond Sponsored Brands that helps you really tell that fuller brand story, bring your message into life, explain your value very clearly, what you bring to the customer, and show up a more array of your products too as well also. So it does both. It drives engagement and drives immediate sales.
Hi everyone, today we're talking about how brands should think about growth on Amazon, not just through the lens of ROAS, but through long-term value creation.
And we're not just talking about sponsored products or sponsored brands, but how they work together to drive a bigger strategy to drive both immediate sales and future demand.
Yeah, and to talk about that, we have DH from Amazon Ads joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm really excited to talk about this today. I think the biggest shift we're seeing today is brands thinking more about not just lower funnel or direct sales, but also future demand and moving up the funnel. So really excited to have this conversation today.
I know that a lot of brands, when they're running advertising on Amazon, think specifically about ROAS. But in your eyes, what's the limitation about just focusing on ROAS instead of thinking about maybe the bigger picture of how sponsored brands and sponsored products work together?
Yeah, I mean, obviously ROAS is extremely important, right? You got to be making money to survive, but it only measures immediate return, right? It doesn't help you think about brand equity or familiarity or recognition or even future demand. If you only focus on short-term efficiency, you're not creating that future demand. And that's really important for brands that need to grow.
Okay. And so how should brands kind of think differently?
Well, they should think in sort of two lanes, right? Shoppers who are ready to buy today and shoppers who are ready to buy in the future. So for instance, shoppers who are discovering today, you want to think about sponsored products, and that's where you look at people who like to capture that immediate demand, right? But future buyers, things people don't know they need you yet, or are still exploring in the space, that's usually for sponsored brands to help you kind of capture those future demand buyers.
So it's less about which advertising format works best, but more about how you can use all of them together.
Exactly. I think smart brands and smart advertisers layer them together strategically. You never want to stop thinking about both today, your buyers in terms of today and in the future, right? If you're only talking about ROAS, then you're not winning. You got to think about ROAS and beyond. Who's going to buy your brand tomorrow, 3 years from now?
Right. Okay. So let's talk about presence then. What does it mean to own your keywords?
Yeah, so immediate means like when someone searches for you specifically, you show up consistently. That's what presence means to me.
So why would that be important though?
Because if you don't do it, someone else will, right? So exactly. So if someone searches for, your vacuum cleaner or your specific like home good and another brand showing up, you're losing out on that sale. So it's really important to make sure you own those keywords, show up consistently, and it helps build that recognition and build the trust too.
Right. Okay. So where does sponsored brands specifically add value beyond performance?
So it builds memory, it builds recognition, it helps you be cohesive messaging, helps you talk about more of your products, helps tell a fuller story, it helps bring your brand to life, right? So when they're able to make that decision to purchase something, they already know who you are, they understand what value you bring, and can make a really confident buying decision when they're ready to hit that cart and check out.
So could we say it's not just a traffic driver, it's a brand driver?
That's very accurate to say. I agree with that, yes.
Okay, so there are millions of kind of curious buyers every single day shopping. I guess we're curious what turns that curiosity into confidence.
That's a good question. Curiosity into confidence, really brands that show up and really explain their value clearly, and consistently is what turns curious shoppers into confident ones. So that's really like being really focused on what you're saying, what value you bring, and explain that to shoppers. And you do that through sponsored brands. That's how creating future demand works.
So with formats like video advertising, is that more about getting immediate conversions, or would you say there's maybe a deeper purpose to video?
I think it's both. So obviously we just recently launched Sponsored Products Video, and that's really about that immediate conversion. That's really about educating your customer at that moment of purchase, that intent moment. But then there's things like Sponsored Brands Video or Video Beyond Sponsored Brands that helps you really tell that fuller brand story, bring your message into life, explain your value very clearly, what you bring to the customer, and show up a more array of your products too as well also. So it does both. It drives engagement and drives immediate sales.
And you've talked a little bit about this idea of, kind of understanding your customer, learning what works for them. But how do the best sellers actually build that idea into how they run their ads?
They keep testing. So one thing you always want to do, and one thing I've learned early in my advertising and media career, is always be testing. Whether you're part of a 5% of your budget, 10% of your budget, like you should always be learning and trying new things, and it helps you really understand your customer better, right? If you stop learning, how do you learn about them as they shift and change things? You have to keep learning too.
Right. That's kind of hard for SMBs though.
Yeah, but they can be little experiments too. They don't have to be huge ones. You don't need to spend millions of dollars on some new thing. You can test CTAs, test headlines, different creative, different images. There are different ways to kind of understand what's working without having these massive tests that anyone can kind of execute.
What would you say the biggest mistake brands are making is with this testing?
When something works, they just stop, right? You always need to be getting better, right? Because your consumer, your shopper is always shifting too. So you can't just rest on that. Great, you learned this thing, you landed on it, it works. Let's try another experiment now.
Okay. And you've been a product marketing leader for years. So I guess beyond ads, what advice would you have for small business owners today?
I mean, focus on clarity, focus on customer value. I think customers today are very discerning with their budgets, and you need to be able to clearly explain the value you bring. Always, right? That's always going to help you win. If they trust you and their expectations match what you're saying, it's a win for everybody.
What never changes in marketing?
That's also a good question. Trust wins. Trust always wins, right? It's if your customers don't trust you, and you betray that trust, it's hard to get it back. So always make sure you think in the lens of keeping your customer trusted.
Cool. And one mindset shift SMBs should adopt, in your opinion?
I say think beyond return on ad spend. Don't only focus on that. And while it's very important, right? It's very important to understand the return you're getting for your marketing spend, but think beyond that. Think beyond the today buyer, think to the future buyer.
What about one best practice for someone running Amazon ads?
Test everything. Try new things. Try to break things. Try new channels, new formats, new CTAs. Just always test.
Okay. What about one thing brands should never stop doing?
Well, I said testing, but I was also say like never stop learning either, right? Like always learn about your customer, meet with them, talk to them, understand what they need, keep on learning.
I think it's safe to say if we could kind of contextualize this into one theme about what we've talked about, it's that growth is not just about one format. It's not just sponsored products or just sponsored brands, but it's kind of about the overall strategy of how it all works together.
Yes, it's beyond ROAS, working together, today demand driving, future demand driving, sponsored products and sponsored brands, and always testing.
Yeah. I was going to say, yeah, kind of both building that hard demand and then the future demand thereafter.
Yes,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Of course.
Anytime.
We'll see you guys in the next session.
See you then.